Ah yes, Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door, the only game that makes you launch yourself to the moon. Ever since the remake of this game came out, I just found out how many people really like this game, so I decided to ask for it as one of my birthday gifts because I wanted to get into the Paper Mario franchise, considering I had never played one of their games besides Paper Jam when I was younger, and somehow have 20 hours in my 3DS. What was I doing? But I didn't get around to playing this until the start of December. For context, my birthday is in mid-November. But once I did get around to playing it, I never regretted it, because this game is awesome. I know this video is probably the most pointless thing ever, because there's 1,000 other videos talking about how well this game is and are much longer, but I think it's only right I give my glaze for this game after referencing it so many times in my 64 and RPG videos, and also doing a chapter ranking of it with my friend Dan, who watched me play the game. So without further ado, let's get started by going over my very few negatives of this game. Alright, my first one is a double-edged sword variable in this game, the dialogue. I'll get into why it's really good soon, but for now let's talk about the negative part. There's so much to it to the point where it gets boring at times. Sometimes I just feel like doing anything else, like walking around or fighting, and not reading and constantly pressing the A button. My next one is just some part of the games that just kinda suck. The Great Tree is an annoying and insanely boring dungeon for me, and the general white quest can go and rot in the wastelands with dark days in the flower fields, honestly. And already my final complaint is just a stupid nitpick. Why the fuck do Tech and Crump end up living? The base literally imploded, and yet both of those fuckers come back to life at the end of the game. Why? Whatever, that's all for the negatives. I'm not even joking. All of them besides the general white quests are also subjective. Actually, never mind, the freaking Tech one isn't subjective. If you enjoy that quest or you think Tech deserves to live, you are stupid. On to the positives. Alright, I'm gonna forget so many things, so I'm sorry if I did because there's so much good shit to unpack here. First of all is the dialogue. It's very frequent and gets boring, as I said earlier, but most of it is enticing and pretty funny. Like, there are so many funny moments in this game to the point where I don't know which ones to highlight because there's too many. The Mario RPGs usually deliver in the comedy aspect, and this is no exception. Even in the shittier games, they do that. There is also the soundtrack, which is just phenomenal and definitely in my top 10 of all time. There's also the plot, which is just absolute cinema. I'd go over some of it, but if it wasn't clear, this video wasn't meant to be a 30-minute video essay. My friend Dan already did that. The way how every chapter has its own separate story inside of itself is executed in a way I don't think I've ever seen it this well before. It's just really that fantastic. I also just really love the character writing. Koops, Vivian, Bobbery, the list goes on, man. Every main character in this game is insanely well written. And then there's the battle system, which is also really freaking good. They buffed partners a lot from 64 by giving them health bars and the ability to use items in battle, which is really cool. You can also do the silly little gambling bingo game for benefits, and I really just enjoy it. There's also many strategy options, especially with your partners. You can spam the ever-living fuck out of a rally link like a loser, or implode everything with bomb on last like a real man. Plus, you can also distribute your stats from leveling up. You can play full fuck it we ball mode by completely ignoring your HP stack to equip 7 bajillion badges, or just evenly distribute it out like I did, like a loser apparently. I said this in my 64 video and I'll say it again. I refuse to believe this is the same franchise that made this and 64's battle systems, and the ones of 6th Sticker Star and Color Splash. Speaking of battling, all the boss fights in this game are incredibly fun and don't make you want to throw your Switch out of a window. The final Dupless fight in Chapter 4 is one of the most fun boss fights I've ever played. There's also the fact that there's so much random side bullshit to do. I never really gave two fucks, but 100%ing this game does take a hot minute, and that's a good thing. Another positive is just the looks. It goes for a style and it executes it really well, featuring some really beautiful places like Bogley Woods. I also just have to comment about the ending. I really like how everyone gives Mario their support before Shadow Queen's second phase, and Goombella's letter is really sweet besides the crime already talked about earlier. There's also the puzzles, which is an insane thing to compliment coming from me who hates puzzles to death. Nearly all of them are easily solvable, and even when you get stuck, you have the built-in Goombella hint system, which might be one of my favorite quality of life features in any game I've ever played. It's a lifesaver if you ever get lost, and it's a shame that Olivia and Goombario are so bad in comparison as hit systems. And another odd thing to highlight coming from me is the length, because it's long. I'm usually not a fan of longer games, but this game is a clear exception. The game can't really drag on because it's already meant to be taken super slowly to soak up all the story and events. It took me 25 whole hours to beat the game, which is a really solid finish time for a game like this. It doesn't overstay its welcome, and it gives you a whole enjoyable experience. And of course, to highlight some final things, I gotta mention some of the incredible chapters of this game. 3, 7, and 5 are all phenomenal and have really good story and gameplay. And if you want more details about how I feel about those chapters, I know I've plugged this man enough, but go check out my friend's Dan video on it, because I'm in it, and I'm cool, I think at least. And yeah, that's all I have to say. And I still feel like I'm missing some things. Yeah, time for some final thoughts. This game's awesome, only let down by some personal nitpicks, which are just bound to happen in like any video game. And this was just an awesome impression for the Paper Mario series. Too bad I realized how bad it fell off pretty quickly after I beat this game. But yeah, it's time for a final score. I think it's probably the easiest one I've ever given out in all of the random games from my cabinet series, aside from New Horizons. I personally think the perfect score for this game is a 9.5. If you think it's a 10, you are completely fair, because I understand that most of my complaints are personal. And that's the end. Thanks for watching. Peace.